Welcome, everybody. Another Sunday, another respect. Back from my one Sunday off. It was a wonderful time to be away and not have to rush around and do anything. But I hope everybody had a great couple of weeks, and welcome back to Respect. There's been a lot going on. Over the past couple of weeks. And I think that what I've noticed more than anything else is that people just don't seem to be understanding what's going on. And in a way, I don't understand it. I thought that we were all beyond the point of watching what's going on and saying, oh my God, what's happening? So I said, you know what, with everything happening and all these people doubting the plan and wondering what's going on, I figured, let me call three wise guys. I mean, let me get three guys wiser than myself and bring them on and have a discussion about this. So I decided we'll have this little round table, and it looks like we just lost one of them. But at any rate, right now, we've got my buddies Patriot Underground and Joe Rosati from TruthStream. How are you guys doing?
Can't complain. I'm here with, 75% of the crew. I know someone's going to, I'll wait till he shows up for people to figure that out.
To bash him. Yes, to bash him. I don't know what happened to him. He was just here 2 seconds ago. But,
yes.
You know, what I wanted to do, and we could do that while we're waiting for Bruce to show up. Up, here's Brucey. Where did you go?
There he is.
I don't know, man. This is the first time I'm doing this stuff. It's not doesn't seem to be going up on my channel, but we'll be fine.
But at any rate, as I said in the open, you know, we're here. There's been a lot of stuff going on, a lot of reveals going on, and a lot of stuff in the news, and people are wondering, you know, why isn't Bondi releasing the files? Why isn't Trump doing this? Why did he do that? Why didn't they do that? And I wanted to start off with one of the obvious things. And of course it disappeared. Let me go and get these back here. All of the things that we've been talking about and all the things that we've been seeing, I think pretty much so we could all say that we're wondering why our people aren't getting it. They've been around this long enough. They understand what the situation is, and they know that that we have to go and just kind of accept the plan and know what the situation is. But a lot of people, it just doesn't seem as though they're getting it, and they're losing focus, and they're losing their patience and everything else. And that's where I wanted to pick up. Now, if I could just find this other photo, which, no, that's not the one. That's not the one.
We're seeing it with a lot of truthers that have been in this for a long time, and now they're showing all their cards with a lot of doubt. And I mean, I get the frustration, but I mean, it just seems like this has been going, we should know by now that when they say certain things are going to happen, they're just not going to happen that way.
Anytime you see a date, yeah, don't ring the bell, because it's not going to happen. So, I mean, let me start with this.
It's like seeing a girl across the bar and you think that she's your date. It's like, no, there's a lot you might have to do to have an actual date.
So, Trump posted this, and he said, "What's going on with my boys?" And in some cases, gals. They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's doing a fantastic job. We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. We have a perfect administration, talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt it. All over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. Little hint and clue there. For years, it's Epstein over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration who conned the world with the Russia hoax, 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, anymore? They created the Epstein files just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier that they used on me. And now my so-called friends are playing right into their hands. Why didn't these radical left lunatics release the Epstein files? If there's anything in there that could have hurt the MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? They haven't even given up on the JFK files or Martin Luther King Jr. files. No matter how much success we've had securing the border, deporting criminals, fixing the economy, energy dominance, a safer world where Iran will not have nuclear weapons, it's never enough for some people. We're about to achieve more in 6 months than any other administration has achieved in over 100 years, and we have so much more to do. We're saving our country and making America great again, which will continue to be our complete priority. The left is imploding. Kash Patel and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue, that rigged and stolen election of 2020, and arresting the thugs and criminals instead of spending month after month looking at nothing but the same old radical left-inspired documents on Jeffrey Epstein. Let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they've tried to do the same thing in 2024. That's what she's looking into as AG, and much more. I don't need to finish it off, but he's looking at that. And then in addition to that, we had the release of this little gem over here from the Daily Mail. Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, is ready to reveal the truth of the pedophile client list, says insiders. So why are Republicans blocking her? And as this stuff comes out, what happens? Everybody has a canary. Why they have a canary, I haven't a clue. We've all been through this. We all know that there's a military operation going on. We all know, and I can't even count anymore how many times I've said it. It's a military operation. Military operates on a need-to-know basis, and we don't need to know. So I'm going to start off with you, Joe. So tell me, how many times were you on the Epstein list, and how many times were you on the Lolita Express?
0 and 0.
Don't lie to me.
What's that?
I said, don't lie to me.
Well, I mean, every time there's this kind of this minutia and this push and pull, it just gets people talking about it. And, to me, it's the whole 5D chess game. The thing you brought up from the Daily Mail, I hadn't seen that before. And so now the genius of this is talking about, why are Republicans blocking it? So now, it's playing out so well because, like I've talked before, many of us have on the shows, you can't just tell the world or tell the public and have them get it that the world is run by a bunch of satanic pedophilic cannibals. Like it's not going to sit that well. So, it takes some time to let things percolate for people to start questioning. And I mean, if you look at how things are playing out, look how far we've come. Yeah, it's frustrating at times, of course, but people are finding out, and now, I mean, Lewis Herms is running for governor. I've never seen someone as bold as him run for office. Like, look how far we've come. It's incredible. I mean, there's so many people at the Rev 17 event put on by Pastor Dave Bryan that are speaking very boldly now, and we're finding our tribe. Everyone's, because there's a paradigm shift, and there's role models that are stepping into their power, and it takes some time for this. So things are actually going overall pretty incredibly well. I would say, yeah, it's horrible to see the floods and things like that, especially when they're orchestrated. It's things like that where it's like, oh man, do we have to have yet another event where there's weather manipulation and children are dying? Yeah, that really sucks. I don't know how all that is supposed to play out, but I guess I'll just start with that.
Okay, but Bruce, when you sit and you do your shows, or you do any of the shows with Lewis, and you're sitting and looking at comments from the audience, and you know that for all intents and purposes, your audience is a pretty smart audience. They've really got it, and they know what's going on. Doesn't it get a little bit frustrating when an event like Epstein comes up and everybody starts to freak out and wonder, they start to lose track of the cause?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the blessing that we have with myself and Lewis and Robert and the whole Screw Big Gov type of team family, is that most of our audience, I mean, they're not buying into the palace intrigue, right, that's going on right now. Where I'm seeing all the heads explode and panties all getting a wad is all over X and all these other social medias. The inauthentic type of truther patriots, if you will, that are doing things for whoa. I got a new camera. My kids got me a new camera for Father's Day, and I forgot sometimes it likes hand motions. So when I talk with my hands and it moves around and wants to zoom in and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So anyway, but yeah, I got to keep my hands to myself. But there's just so much stuff going on. And here's the thing: my particular viewpoint, unpopular as it might be on this, is this whole Epstein list from the very jump. Everybody wants the Epstein list. Release the list. Release the list. Well, if there's a bunch of criminals, pedophiles, child rapists, you're just not going to put that out there on Front Street. That's there has to be some type of investigative or some type of case that's bringing up against these type of people if that ends up happening. So I never expected to see the Epstein list. Back a few months ago when they got all these influencers come to the White House and they all got these 3-ring binders, full of all this stuff that we already knew was a bunch of stuff, a bunch of hooey. There's lots of different angles and things at play that we don't have no idea what's going on. And, we're just sitting here, just, average people trying to read the tea leaves and see what's going on, use our intuition and our discernment to really, find our way through this whole situation. And the thing that really I get a chuckle out of is seeing this stuff. I trust Trump. That's the bottom line. I mean, it comes down to that one thing. If you do trust Trump or not, because now there's a whole big division in the movement. Well, if you're for Trump, then you're for pedophiles. It's another act of divisiveness that they're trying to put in. And so this whole, like I said, palace intrigue stuff, I kind of monitor it, but I don't let it get too far. I'm trying to stay more emotionally even keeled. And so the thing that bothers me is the messaging that come out from Trump. They always said on day one, we're going to do this and this and this, and nothing ever happens. And that just, makes it worse. So we only got 18 months, less than 18 months before the midterms. And if they can't get their act together, we're going to see what ends up happening. one of the things that nobody's talking about is John Solomon. He seems to be a pretty even-keeled-ish, middle of the road type of real journalist, if there's very few of those today. And he says, hey, chill out a little bit, with what's going to be happening, what's coming in the next few weeks, people are going to be very, very happy. So, I mean, I think this is another way for, the Trump administration, the people, to really find out who's behind them. And it's just causing a bunch of drama and BS, and it takes our eye off of the ball of what we need to do. Because regardless of Epstein list gets released or not, we still got a country to save. There's still a bunch of criminals, and that's what really gets me torqued off. Is when is somebody going to be held accountable? It can go all the way back. Even in most recent history, the Fast and the Furious stuff that we know. If just half of the stuff that we believe is true, there's plenty enough evidence to string some people up, throw them in jail, perp walk them, handcuffs, orange jumpsuits, whatever you want to call it. There's plenty of stuff to do something for somebody. So until somebody's, be held accountable for something, then, I'm keeping my powder dry. I'm waiting. I'm trusting Trump. I'm trusting the plan. As hard as it seems, it's easy to say, really hard to do sometimes. But that's where I'm at on this whole thing.
Patriot Underground, my friend. You've got a pretty staid audience. And they also very, very stable-minded and very understanding of things that are going on. But where do you see your audience in regard to all of the reactiveness that's been out there in our grouping, in our alternative media?
Well, thanks for having me on again, Mark. I really do appreciate it. And it's great to be back. It's been great to be back with you. And of course, my good friend Joe from TruthStream. I know that Bruce and I had a conversation a while back, so it's nice to be back with him, and certainly an honor to be a part of this roundtable discussion. So, I think what I'm seeing, quite frankly, is primarily within my audience, people do understand, because they've been trained over many, many years now at this point, how to navigate fifth generation warfare. Not unlike your audience, not unlike Bruce's audience and TruthStream. This is what we do. If you know what you're looking for, if you have the right eyes to looking at, for example, where you started tonight with Trump's truth. I mean, that was a brilliant, brilliant way to lead off, because this is all about, I'm just going to give you my take on it here. I actually did a show on this yesterday, but this is all about reverse psychology. People often talk about Trump and the art of the deal. A big part of that is the art of reverse psychology. That's what we're witnessing play out in real time right now. And you chuckled a little bit, Mark, when you read that line. Trump says, Epstein, a guy who never dies. I thought I picked up on that immediately. I saw a lot of people in my audience picked up on that as well, because and this is speculative, obviously, but if you really think about it, we know that Trump played a role working with I believe it was the FBI to implicate Epstein, and he was the one who was presiding. He was president when Epstein was arrested, and so it kind of makes sense if you're Trump and the White Hats, and that you've been working in the background to with the authorities to get this guy arrested, that you would make sure that a high value target like that would actually be protected, and that he wouldn't be able to quote unquote kill himself. And, this comes in conjunction with the missing minute at the end of the surveillance video. But even more interestingly for me, it seems to be converging with the investigations that have been announced into James Comey and John Brennan. You notice that right on the heels of this Oval Office, it wasn't the Oval Office, but it was his cabinet meeting, when Trump made those initial comments, somebody asked him about Epstein, and he just seemed so frustrated. And he was like, people still talking about that creep, and then he followed it up with that truth, essentially saying nobody cares, and on and on. And I'll get to that in a moment. But it's interesting that right on the heels of that, Kash Patel comes out and announces that there's an investigation into Comey and to Brennan, which of course brings Russiagate, the whole crossfire hurricane scenario, back into the spotlight. And that, of course, has a direct connection with Epstein. A lot of people don't even realize that. But if you go back to the Q drops, and I don't remember the specific number, but there's one in particular that highlights the Southern District of New York and talks about that it's not just I mean, this is the place where like all of these high profile investigations were happening. The Epstein files, the Wiener laptop, the Clinton Foundation. And of course, right at the center of that have been Comey and Brennan. Right. So, and you read through Trump's truth there, and he says things that are so, it's like that saying, if it's over the top, it's an op. I don't remember where I heard that first, but it seems like so obvious. I think Joe is kind of alluding to that. And those of us who have been in this and been following Q to a certain extent and being, like I said, trained to be able to navigate these types of developments, we know that when something is so ludicrously over the top, it has to be some sort of a reverse psyop in line with everything else we've seen. I mean, what did Trump say in that post? He was talking about the left. He's talking about Obama and Hillary and Biden. And he even actually mentioned, this is where the convergence comes in. He mentions Comey and Brennan in conjunction with the Epstein files. He said they created the Epstein files just like they created the Steele dossier. And so in my mind, what's happening here is that he, just like he's been doing all along, this is nothing new with Trump. He baits the left, right? He baits the enemy. He says that these files were written by Obama and Hillary and Brennan and Comey and Biden. It's obviously absurd on its face to say that these files were written by them. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. The radical left is the most implicated by the Epstein files, as we're going to ultimately come to find out. They would have zero reason to perpetuate this story. And like I mentioned before, Epstein, he was arrested under Trump's administration, but he's trying to imply that the left, bare minimum, was doctoring these files. So what does this do? When you think about it from a strategic standpoint, like a 40,000 foot view, and you ask yourself the question, cui bono, who benefits from this? Like Trump is creating the optics deliberately that his administration is complicit in a cover-up. So what does that do? You got to think about it from that lens. I mean, a lot of people who get really upset by it, they only see, well, they're closing the door on the Epstein files. We're never going to get anything, and Trump is complicit and all of these things, but they don't think about why those optics are being created and who benefits from from that narrative being put out there. And we've already seen the Epstein searches over the past couple of days on X and really all over the internet. They're up like over 2,000%. So when you think about, okay, well, what are the white hats driving at here? They're trying to get everybody, they're trying to work people up into a frenzy over this. And it's going to take a while, because the reality of the matter is that our community have been the ones that have been ultimately keeping this story alive. It hasn't been on the mainstream. It hasn't been the normies. Most of them, they couldn't care less, unless they think that Trump is implicated in those files, like Elon Musk said. And now he's following it up, creating, like I said, the optics that, no, there's nothing to see here, and making it so over the top ridiculous. And the other thing is, it's very interesting if you compare, for those people who might be doubting right now, go back and look at all the statements that Trump has made over the years about Epstein. That he put out tweets about Epstein. He put out multiple different videos talking about Epstein. But even more importantly, the larger issue of human trafficking and pedophilia. And ask yourself, I mean, this is the same guy who was saying, quick trial, execution. There's way too many of these pedophiles on the streets. We got to clean it up, on and on. And going all the way back to 2014, do people think suddenly that Trump has just decided that, like Tucker Carlson has been saying, is getting in on this whole kayfabe? Well, you've got the government coming out and saying, well, you've had thousands and thousands of children raped, bare minimum, on video, but they're not willing to tell us who's responsible. No one is going to be held accountable for this. We're supposed to just turn the page and move on. And I would say that type of, I mean, when most of the country read what Trump had to say, I would almost guarantee you that regardless of whether they were on the left or the right, they fundamentally disagreed with what Trump was saying. And he actually, if you go and you look, he got ratioed on that. I didn't even know what that word meant, but he got ratioed on it. Bruce is shaking his head. Like, there were more people who commented than even like viewed the post or something crazy like that. It was just people were going off. And if you go to the same exact truth that Mark started with, and you start scrolling through those comments, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Trump did this by design, right? He's saying nobody cares. He knows that everybody cares. He knows that his base especially is never going to stop asking about Epstein. Now, look, I understand when people say, well, there's lots of other issues and there are lots of other things that that matter in addition to Epstein, but I've made the case, and in conjunction with what Q told us was going to unify the people, that the Epstein case really is the core of the Great Awakening, because it's not the man himself, it's the thread. And once that thread gets pulled, everything starts to unravel from there. And it takes us down that deep, dark, depraved rabbit hole that is ultimately what's going to unify the people. Crimes against children, cross-party lines. It was made very, very clear to us. And this is why I've been adamant that full disclosure and justice within reason. Obviously, you can't just take the satanic trash bag and dump it over an unsuspecting public. Totally understand that. But at the end of the day, this needs to be, if nothing else gets revealed to the people, the pedophilia, the human trafficking, the satanic ritual abuse, all of it has to come out, because that really is the core of the evil. And if people don't know about it, what are we waking up to? There is no Great Awakening. And I've said many times, and I don't believe that it's ever going to go in this direction, but I've said it anyway, that there's no victory in this war without justice being made public. And I've said it multiple times. That's a hill I'll die on. That doesn't mean that I'm getting upset about what I'm seeing. Like I explained, this is all part of the way that this is being rolled out, specifically with military precision, in order to, like your good friend Dave, your counterpart, says all the time, to manufacture consent within the masses, okay, within the normies, that there is a fundamental problem here, that we cannot get to justice, that our government is protecting evil. And that this is also part of the reason why I still believe that we are going to be ultimately heading into an EBS type of situation, where there is an overt military takeover, just like the drops told us would be the eventual end result. So do I get triggered by the Epstein stuff getting dangled in front of me? If I'm being honest with you, yeah, I do. If there's one thing that triggers me, that's it, because it's so important. However, I also recognize exactly what they're doing. And I don't expect, quite frankly, at this point, even with Comey and Brennan, and even with the statements that were made by John Solomon, who Bruce mentioned him. I have great amount of respect for John Solomon. I'm sure he's got great sources. But it's yet again, before you start building up your expectations, right? You have to like recognize the pattern that we're involved with here. It's an ebb and flow, and you got to learn to expect these rug pulls, because these rug pulls are doing exactly what they're designed to do, which is to whip that public up into a frenzy. And ultimately, and I'll kind of wind it down with this, I do believe that stemming from these investigations, we're going to see some form of a RICO case play out. That's my ultimate belief, is that optically, that whether it's in civilian court, I mean, that's the thing. We still don't know. We're watching a scripted movie. Does that mean that things that have taken place behind the scenes, tribunals perhaps that have taken place, justice that's already been meted out behind the scenes, is that going to play out optically for the public in a civilian environment? Or are we just going to continually show the people that the civilian system is broken, that there is no justice in the Justice Department, like Juan O'Sabin famously said, and then ultimately get to a military, like an overt military tribunal scenario? One way or another, I think that's the direction that we're headed. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, when you look at all of this stuff, and all three of you touched on it in different forms, it is a psyop. It is 5D chess. Okay, it's a movie, and we all understand that. But I think that a lot of people, and my phrase with this whole operation has always been from the get-go, if it's going to have legs, how do you change human nature? And so we watch the reactiveness, and we were just talking Thursday night with Lieutenant Colonel Bosey about this, the reactiveness. And in a way, it's purposeful reactiveness that they're putting out, because number one, it does get the public's interest and does get them riled up to question it more and find out what's going on. But by the same token, it's also showing them and helping to educate them in what's going on, playing their game against them. So when you look now at the Comey Brennan situation, and we know it was stated right at the beginning, the people you think are bad guys may be good guys, and the people that you think are good guys may be bad guys. Nobody knows who's playing what role. So, Bruce, where do these people look at this stuff from? Because they're still looking at Comey as a bad guy, and he may not be.
Well, I don't know if him becoming a good guy. Talk about rug pulls. That would sure be a rug pull for sure if they Comey ends up being a white hat. I mean, there's been all kinds of craziness, different scenarios and different things that people come up with. I mean, for the Epstein stuff and the whole Pam Bondi thing, just the other day, yesterday, or the day before, Matt Gaetz was supposed to be speaking at the Turning Point, the Student Action Summit down there in Tampa, and he couldn't because allegedly he got summoned, to Washington D.C. all of a sudden, and so now there's that scenario rolling around out there that hey, when Congress adjourns for their summer deal, that he's gonna fire Bondi and bring in Gaetz, and that's gonna be the magic bullet or something, or some type of special counsel. Who knows? But the bottom line is we just gotta trust, right? I mean, myself personally, I've been going through a lot of changes for my own self, growing personally, doing things differently, understanding, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who thought this whole thing would be over by now, right? We're expecting, the Biden inauguration to not even happen, but here we are. And so I'm settling in for the long game. And, with a couple years ago, this is 25. So it was February of 23. I was frustrated as all get out. I was upset. I was about ready to cash in my chips. I'm done. To stop live streaming. I'm over it. It's done. I'm done playing the game. I don't want to play this game anymore. I want to take my ball and go home. But so I was crying out. And how do we get through this? How are we going to get through this and bring some accountability that we all know about justice and all that stuff's coming? And the word that came to me was connections. And I was like, what connections? And so a little bit time went by, it fleshed out. And the number one connection that we need to be connected to our creator, God's source, whatever you want to call that, higher power, whatever name you want to put on it. That's because that's the ultimate source of truth, because that's really what we're all looking for. We have this thing we're called truthers, in the community. We don't know truth. We're experiencing, we're uncovering, we're seeking truth. We're more truth seekers than we are truthers, because really nobody knows. Even a couple of years ago, we were at a grand finale of one of the truth tours, and Juan O'Savin was talking to us at a brunch after the whole event was over, and he said even the people pulling the levers of power don't know what's going to be happening. It's a moves and counter moves types of situation. They have a general idea of the path that they're going to want to go on, but anybody who tells you they know what's going on, they're number one lying to you. So that that was the number one connection, was getting connected to source. Number two is we got to get connected to ourselves, right? Instead of being identifying with whatever, we need to who is Bruce at my core? Who am I really, right? When I peel back all the layers, all the identity, all the masks that we put on to please our audience, to please our spouse, to please our employer, job, whatever. Who am I really? So I have to discover that. And then the third connection was getting connected to other people. And that's what we do with these shows, these episodes, live streams, whatever you want to call them, and then the live events. We got to get connected to other people. And Joe mentioned it. We're finding our tribe, right? We got to build this up. So that's where I've been just spending a lot of time, developing myself, trying to become more even keeled, more understanding of the process. But it's fun to watch. It's not a hyperbole, but this is the greatest time to be alive, even with all the chaos and the stuff going on. Every single day, it's something new, that we didn't understand or think about before. So, that if we just, trust the process, right? Embrace the suck as Steve Bannon sometimes says, right? We got to go through this thing, and we can't expect that hundreds or thousands of years of this satanic rule over humanity is somehow going to get turned around in a couple of years, right? So this is going to take some time. And then, one other little thing I'll drop it off here is the Epstein thing. If all that stuff came out all at one time, and even Patriot Underground hinted around at it, people's heads would explode. I mean, it would completely crash all society because of the high level of not just the United States government, and forget about party, they're all criminals. All whether R, D, independent, they're all criminals. So that, and other countries as well. I mean, the entire infrastructure of our ruling parties, our ruling elites, ruling class, if you will, would come crashing down all in one fell swoop, and it would be just utter and total chaos. So this has to be some type of controlled release to be able to keep people from jumping off. Even Q talks about if everything came out at one time, people's heads would explode. People jumping off of bridges and all that different type of stuff. So I think this is more of a Patriot Underground even mentioned it. The searches for Epstein stuff is just in the 1,200, 2,000% increase. People's like, who is this Epstein guy? I have no idea, right? Everybody's talking about it, so let's go check it out. And so more and more people are becoming awake, and so that I'm just happy to be around and be able to have some type of voice and try to keep people calm. And let's get through this thing. Everything is going to be fine.
Well, Patriot, I hate to use any of Dave's lines, but it's so appropriate here. We all have that voice inside of us, that little rumbling in your gut that is God talking to you, and then the monkey brain takes over. And the monkey brains. I always relate it to the old cartoons where you've got the angel sitting on one shoulder and the devil sitting on the other, and one saying, "No, don't you do that." The other one saying, "Go for it. Just do it already." It's that type of a situation. That is human nature 101. How much do you see that contributing to this angst in and amongst our people?
Well, I see it a lot, and I experience it a lot myself. I mean, Bruce said it just a moment ago. We're all basically we're ordinary people. And I like the distinction there. Yeah, people call us truthers as if we know the truth. We're truth seekers. It's a much more appropriate term. But yeah, this process for me personally, and I would say it probably is the same for a lot of other people. As it's different. If you're a normie, I can't speak to what it's like being a normie. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been a normie and going through this process. But for people who are awake, and I've talked about this before in different contexts, I think this is all about learning how to let go of expectations. And that is not an easily, it's tied directly to the humanity that you're talking about, right? We're all human. And so therefore, and we're witnessing this kind of like this torrent of information and disinformation and all types of deception going on, recognizing that we're living in this inverted reality. And so, of course, there's that part of us that all wants it to end. I mean, I was right there with you, Bruce, a couple of years ago. Heck, I've been there on multiple different times on my journey. And unlike a lot of other people, I'm very open about it. Sometimes I take flack for it, for where I'm at on any given day. But yeah, have I allowed my expectations to get the better of me? Yes, of course, because we all want this to be over. We want the truth to come out. And more importantly, it's not just about vindication. That's a part of it, and it's important, but it's really about the healing process. We all just want to see this world become a better place. We want to reconnect with the people in whenever possible, the people that, we've been had ripped away from us by living in this insane, undergoing this insane war for such a long time. We've all experienced a lot of pain, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of suffering as the result of that in various different forms. And so, I mean, there's a whole myriad of reasons why we want it to be over. So that when they start dangling the carrot in front of you, you want to build up that expectation. There's that part of you that's like, maybe that one angel on the shoulder says like, okay, this is it. And then the other one maybe is saying, don't be an idiot. This is the same thing they do every single time. Don't fall for it. And as time goes on, and we build our understanding of fifth generation warfare. You got to remember, this is totally unprecedented. There's never been anything like this before. We're the first generation to go through this process, and to add us another level to it, we're all just ordinary people who are trying the best that we can to navigate it, and in the process also help other people along with that basic goal, which is to help people. And that's ultimately what drives me. That's
Right.
what fuels my passion, is being able to know that I've at least played some role in helping people find comfort and peace throughout this process. But do I see a lot of that and experience that? Absolutely. But we have to learn how to let go of the expectation and to focus on, take the emotion out of everything. That's why it was so driven into our heads, especially the Q-tards out there. Q talks about it over and over and over. What emotion does. It clouds logic. It clouds reason. And those are the two things that you probably need more of than anything else to be able to make any kind of sense of fifth generation war. If you're being led around by your emotions, and this is not a criticism of anybody, because if it is, then I'm criticizing myself in the process.
Yep.
You get led around by your emotions and you allow those expectations to build, those rug pulls are going to be like, you're going to feel that at a much deeper level. Don't get me wrong. I think all of us, even if we weren't expecting the Epstein stuff to come out, there's a part of you when that rug pull comes, you're kind of like, all right, yeah, I knew that was going to come, but it still sort of pisses you off a little bit. I mean, we all have an emotional response to it, but it's learning how to keep that at bay and to recognize what the 40,000-foot view is, and to ask that all important question that I mentioned before: who is benefiting from all of these things playing out the way that they are? Forget about what Trump is saying or doing. Forget about what Kash Patel is saying or doing, or this kayfabe drama between Bondi and Bongino and all of these things. I mean, look, there's a reason we were told that we're watching a movie, so that we could understand that we have to put emotion aside and realize that this is all being, to a large extent, it's already pre-planned. I'm not suggesting that there's not some fluidity in moves and counter moves like Bruce talked about, but the big picture, this was mapped out a long time ago. They have a plan. They know what they're doing. And, again, and we can go through we've already talked about multiple different examples of that. But, the reality of the matter is that if you understand that the end game is ultimately to demonstrate to the public time and time and time again, by building up these expectations and doing these rug pulls, that the system is broken. If you get that is the objective, then it's a lot easier to take emotion out of it. But if you're actually taking things at face value and listening to what Trump is saying versus what Bondi is saying versus what Kash is saying versus what anybody else is saying out there, you're going to scramble your eggs and you're going to lose sight of the big picture, and you're going to start to get really cynical and black-pilled in the process, because you're not keeping in mind what the ultimate goal is. And the reality is that I'll pass it after this, but Bruce was talking about, I think, alluding to a post where Q said that a full picture would put 99% of the people in the hospital, right? And that people are just simply not prepared for this level of evil at this point in time. But how do you reverse that? It's kind of like we always talk about, like, we're reversing the deep state tactics. So, okay, you have an unsuspecting public. You've got unspeakable evil that you need to disclose to the public, but you have to do it in a way that the entire society doesn't just fall apart. So how do you do that? Well, I think we're witnessing that right now.
Yep.
It's, you get the public to demand it instead of just dumping it on everybody and saying, here it is. You get the public to demand it. And it's a gradual process. You get them invested. My good friend Mike King wrote a great article about this. And I'm not going to get into too much detail on it because I'm going to have him on tomorrow. But he has a marketing background. And in his recent article where he was talking about analyzing this Epstein situation, there's an acronym within the marketing world, which is AIDA, which stands for awareness, interest, desire, and action. And the way that he explains it is that, like, the normies have already been made aware of Epstein Island, of Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, they already know, like, that general awareness, you can check off that box. Their interest, the second second word in that acronym. How do you pique their interest? Well, you start to show them that this is being covered up, that the powers that be, the government, all these powerful people are covering up this scandal. So it's like they're aware that there's this Epstein Island thing. And now they're also starting to get interested in it because they're being shown that something is being covered up, right? So you got the awareness, you got the interest. Where does the desire come in? The desire comes in basically by continuing to fuel this fire to the point where people are just completely convinced that they're not being told the truth about an issue of enormous implications. And that's how you get people to start buying in, desiring the truth, and then ultimately demanding action. And Michael will elaborate more on that, I'm sure, tomorrow. But it's a really great point, because when you think about it, that is what the white hats are engaged in. They're trying to mitigate the damage that this is, the psychological, societal damage that this is going to cause by getting the public, by gradually seeding these ideas, but not just seeding the idea itself, but getting the public to basically sink their teeth in, to get invested in the process, to desire more information, and then ultimately, when it hits a crescendo, to demand that action be taken. And once we get to that point where you have a mass consensus that there is a demand that something is rotten in Denmark and the people are just not having it anymore, boom, that's when you're going to see it come out. Maybe not right away, but that's when you're getting into the season where people are actually ready for it.
Well, what are your thoughts on this, Joe? You've had enough time to sit there and absorb all of this.
Well, I mean, it really makes sense. Like if you what Patriot Underground just said, I try to find what the common thread is to what's been going on for the last 5-6 years at least. I mean, I guess I've been awake for about 5 at the level of understanding human trafficking and adrenochrome and stuff like that. And for me, it was, okay, I want to learn more, and obviously a little bit more than I guess most folks, because we actually started a show and are putting ourselves out there publicly, and so obviously I'm pretty interested in this stuff, and we've casted a very, very wide net. And so on TruthStream and I sent you a clip, Mark, from Lisa and Honey, and it's about 53 seconds. I think it'd be great to play it because it really shows the depth of what humanity has agreed to and how much we've been bamboozled, and because we do some woo stuff, if you will, and like even with the post that you shared with Trump, a lot of folks are aware of gematria, and that when Trump capitalizes certain letters and words, there's codes in that, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen the decode on the initial truth that you just shared, but there's ways to go through each letter that's capitalized and find the numerical value and find a geometric, I suppose, descriptor or descriptors of the hidden meaning that Trump has in that statement. So there's a lot of layers to this, but if you could you play that clip with Lisa and Honey, because I think it'll help people kind of grasp a little bit more of the depth of what we're involved in right now.
I think we could do that.
Yeah. I love having Lisa and Honey on the show because they get in the last show we did was on the shape of the earth. It's not necessarily flat or round, but it's a toroidal field. And it's a really interesting way to look at things. So if some people are interested in that sort of subject matter, they might find that compelling. But yeah, roll this clip if you would.
Okay. Let's just do this and let's roll it.
And we are basically powering this ascension, and we're doing it with the agreement of the human being, or what I usually call the inner child inside of us, because they also have free will. So we have to be their guide, but we are not dragging them along. They have to agree to go. And it's been a huge process because Earth fell when Earth was basically captured and fell into the 3D, because she was not originally a 3rd density planet. She was a 5th density planet. So when she got pulled in to the 3D, humanity agreed to learn from that experience and to stay. So they've been fooled into thinking this was the real reality. And we are basically powering this ascension, and we're doing it with the agreement of the human being, or what I usually call the inner child inside of us, because they also have free will.
It's repeating,
So
Mark.
we have to be their guide, but we are not.
So yeah, we agreed to be in a 3D, like the reality that we're in is really not the true reality that was intended for us. And so, it takes a lot to get out of that. And so part of that shift, or that ascension, is having conversations like this. And if people are fortunate enough to be able to talk about this stuff in a way like, and I told Lisa and Honey this a couple years ago, I would have not been able to listen to that conversation. I would have been like, you guys are out of your minds. But the more you listen to stuff like this, the more you start thinking, okay, well, if we've been lied to about this and lied to about that, then what is it why are there so many lies? I think the answer is pretty clear. Humans are magnificent, beautiful, amazing creatures. And that's why they want to dumb us down and lie to us and poison us and everything else. So, it's going to be, it's biblical now, but it's going to be phenomenal when we're finally aware as a general, humanity in general is like, oh my gosh, this is what we were supposed to be in. Like, we're just starting to learn about that. This is incredible. So I love that, Scott and I have befriended so many different people with so many different perspectives. And sometimes, it's a little confusing, but underneath all of it is an amazing, beautiful group of humans that are on this adventure together and just want to help each other figure it out, and not say, oh, we know we have all the answers. Because some people may be like, well, how does Honey know this? Well, Honey travels into the astral. She reads Akashic records. Like, this isn't stuff I do, but it's pretty amazing to start even having these conversations. So hopefully that can help people to start realizing what we've been up against. That's pretty massive.
Well, look, again, it goes back to, it goes back to human nature. There are things that people as people accept, and there are things that people as people just, you're out of your bloody mind, So it's that type of thing. And where I wanted to go with this next, because it really fits the whole process here. And I'm going to start with you, Patriot, because my analogy will go perfectly with you. It's like, you look at Bill Buckner, great baseball player, and he lets one ball go through his legs, and he's a bum. And everybody hates him. And that's really, it's that mentality that we're seeing a lot of now. If they see something's coming along, and they've already, and what I've groused about for a long time already, and we'll get into that later, but how people look at us kind of like the way that they looked at regular MSM anchors. Patriot said, or Bruce said, or Joe said, or Dave said, or Mark said. No, you've got more information at your fingertips than you've ever had before. Go look, but they won't. And so they take our word, and then when it doesn't work out, you're the bum. And this is the mentality that's out there. So, what are your thoughts with that?
Well, I would say that there is some of that. I do recognize that there's some of that, where people don't really want to do their own research, and they're still kind of stuck inside of that paradigm that you described, where they just want somebody to tell them the truth. They just want somebody to reveal them the truth. When people recognize that they've been lied to, and they're continuing to be lied to, I think that creates I mean, it seems pretty logical that that would create a baseline level of anger inside of everybody. I mean, you know, they say the truth will piss you off, will set you free, but first it's going to piss you off. I think that's the first part of awakening. People get pissed off and they're angry and they're upset about it. And this is why, I mean, you, myself, and Dave, and I know that many times with Joe and Scott, I mean, I've had this conversation about why it's so important to be tethered to, not that it's the be all and end all in terms of every conversation, but understanding the basic roadmap of fifth generation war. The Q drops are about as good as we're going to get in terms of keeping us tethered to what's really going on here and helping us navigate through how to deal with these very difficult emotions. And I think that's really what's driving it. We're all human. People have good days and bad days. You're going to wake up certain days and you're just not going to want to look at any of this crap. And you're going to be like, I'm done with it. I'm frustrated. You know, kind of like what Bruce described when he was back in 2023. We've all had those moments because just by virtue of being human. But then ultimately, I think for all of us, we realize that, you know, once you get on this journey, there really is nowhere else to go. I mean, you go back to the metaphor of the Matrix. I mean, none of us are taking the blue pill. I mean, that's fiction. That's not going to happen. Once you've taken the red pill and you know, you're on an entirely different timeline in a sense, or let's put it this way, you're on a totally different trajectory in your life. And so, you know, eventually people dust themselves off, they lick their wounds or whatever, and they come back and they get back in the game and they just kind of start over. Hopefully, though, having learned a series of lessons along the way. Not to say that any of us are going to get this right all the time. And anybody who, you know, wants to point the finger at anybody out there, I don't care who they are, and say, well, you didn't get this right. You said this wrong. You said this was going to happen. I mean, sure, I get my share of that as well. I mean, you've been doing this for a while. Eventually, people are going to start pointing out all of your imperfections. But the reality is we're all adults here, and we all know the truth, which is that less than 10 people have a full picture, and they're not talking. You know, these are like all, and only 3 of them or something are non-military folks. They're not going to tell us the plan. And so, sure, we're going to, but you know, we're going to get certain things wrong, but we're also consistently getting up to the batter's box and taking swings and trying to analyze all this and figure out where this is all headed. So yeah, I do see a bit of that. And in the broader picture, in terms of the end game of all this, and it kind of ties into what some of the stuff that Joe is talking about ascension and recognizing that we're all kind of, you know, we're stuck in this Truman Show reality. I think that at the end of the day, there's going to be some sort of a revelation along those lines. There's been lots of different arguments about, you know, this movie, this scripted movie, call it what you will, has gotten so twisted up and knotted up and convoluted and so freaking confusing that it seems almost impossible to me that they're just going to like use the movie as a vehicle to somehow bring us back into reality. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that at a certain point, there's going to have to be some sort of an acknowledgement that, and again, it kind of goes with like, you know, not dumping the trash can all over the public, done in a delicate way. I don't think it would make sense for the white hats to say, guess what, guys? You've all been living in the Truman Show. You've all been living in a scripted movie. I don't think that would go over very well for the public. I don't think people would understand that. But they might understand if the military, Trump, whomever, comes out at the appropriate time, maybe an EBS, Insurrection Act moment, and says, you know, my fellow Americans, the storm is upon us, whatever. But we have been involved in a military sting operation. That's a lot different than telling people that they've been living in basically an illusion in a scripted movie. I think that would kind of have the same effect on a lot of folks. Like imagine just living your life like your average normie out there, thinking that everything that you're experiencing organically is actually true and real, and then you come to find out that it's all being manipulated. That'd be enough to get a lot of people to jump off that bridge in and of itself. So, you know, again, I think it's bringing people along slowly but surely. And then eventually, if you can get people to understand that they've, in some sense, I think eventually people will get that they were living through a kind of a scripted movie. But if you get them to gradually understand, like, okay, the military kind of took over back then because there were these crimes going on and they set up this sting operation to show the public the truth and all these things, like you could get them to understand that. And then gradually it kind of branches out from there, and people have a much broader perspective on reality, and their consciousness expands from that. And I think that ultimately needs to happen.
Well, Joe, bouncing off what Patriot just said in the ever continuing blame game, if at any point they were to turn around and reveal that you've been living in the movie, you've been living in this Truman Show, the way the people are right now, they would immediately turn around and say, look what he did. Look at all these people who died. Look at all these people who got hurt. Look what they did to us economically, et cetera, et cetera. We told you Trump was evil. This is what he did.
Right.
So, I mean, again, it falls back to this changing of the ability to change human nature, and where would you take people? Where would you see them leaning toward, and how would you redirect? How would you get them back on track?
So are you saying in a nutshell, like if everybody kind of found out that they're in this movie that's being curated by the white hats? Is that the question? Just so I have.
Pretty much so.
Well, I mean, I suppose even those of us that are aware of this, and the delays that have went on, my own personal experience, my sister-in-law, I told her this probably about 5 years ago, like, hey, because I thought, in about six months, she's probably going to find out the truth anyway. I'm like, yeah, these Tom Hanks is a bad guy. There's this adrenochrome stuff, and the real one's been taken out. And it's been, every, I don't know, half year, a year, she'll, like last year, she sent me a picture of her friend was likely like the clone of Tom Hanks or someone in Sun Valley. And so I'm sitting there like, I couldn't really say much to her because I kind of already lost that part. But I'll say this on a personal level, even though it is somewhat of a movie, and it's been drawn out for quite a long time, it's pulling real things out of all of us in this movement. I think I think anyone is starting to find out certain things about themselves, whether they're aware of this stuff or not. I think maybe some people are just starting to kind of question things around them. So, I suppose if we just showed them what would have happened had there not been this intervention, and they really grasped that, then that's where they might go, oh my gosh, okay, well, we would all be dead and humanity be wiped out. So there wasn't really a whole lot of options here. One is just let it play out and we're all dead. Two, put everybody in the hospital, and most people probably wouldn't necessarily even know what they're watching. They wouldn't even think it's real. And three is to go about it like this. So this is really the best option. If I had to explain it to somebody, I suppose it'd be like that.
You also just described why the scare event is necessary. I mean, ultimately, right? Because again, if you're going to spring the trap at the end of the sting operation, the public has to see the actual threat, right? There has to be, I think, that element to it as well, because otherwise, on the other end of it, it wouldn't make any sense. The public wouldn't buy that. Oh, well, we've been running this military sting operation, and even though you didn't see anything too scary, trust us, it was going to be really bad. No, that's why we have to actually be brought to the precipice,
right?
And actually have people understand that geopolitically, domestically, financially, the whole thing was about to come crashing down, and it was going to be no more America. I mean, again, these are things that used to get talked about years ago and during the fake Biden era a lot more. But the conversation has kind of taken a different twist now that Trump is back optically in power, and it's gone, things are happening right now that a lot of people never really expected in terms of sequence. I think when Trump won the election and came back for what we know is ultimately his third term, it started to maybe get people to think a little bit differently. Like, oh, okay, well, we didn't expect that was going to happen. So what else might not be? What else might be different? Maybe we're not going to have an EBS. Maybe we're not going to have, the scare necessary event. Maybe they're just going to gradually, within this civilian structure, bring out the truth. And again, they still might, but this is, I think there was kind of a shift in terms of how people are perceiving what might actually happen next, because Trump came right out the gate in January, started doing all of these really great things. And it kind of gave you the perception that we were just going full stream ahead with disclosure and all of these things. And now we're starting to find out a little bit differently. And I think wisely, looking back to previous conversations and going back to the drops and the core understanding of how the end game was going to play out, not the timing, not the date, not the sequence, but ultimately what that end game is going to look like. And there has to be that scare necessary event for what Joe just explained it to a T. People have to see it. They have to experience it, the fear associated with that, in order to be sold on the idea that it had to be this way, and that there was this sting operation being run by the military in the background in order to prevent the deep state from carrying out their plans. But if people don't experience it and get it to the precipice, they'll never believe it.
Right.
Well, Bruce, I mean, when you look at what we've just discussed, and this goes for all three of you, you look at what we just discussed, and you, not necessarily talking about our audiences, not necessarily talking about people who are greatly awake, mostly awake, somewhat awake, but the people who are still woke, the people who just plain don't get it, and what the cabal and what, and I helped, the people in the media have done to create this victim mentality all around, not just our country, but all around the world. Don't you feel that a reveal like that, if they let all the information out, if they let out the fact that, all these people were wearing masks, and I've tried to point it out to a bunch of people with a split screen of Biden and Biden, and saying, you get older, your skin doesn't get tighter, it gets looser. Look at it, your skin just gets looser as you get older. But people don't see it. And I think that if there was such a reveal, the people, the normies especially, the never Trumpers especially, and the people who are just barely awake would get even more resentful than they already are now with simple things like Epstein and Comey and the floods, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Well, you've mentioned it comes down to, you kind of hinted around at it a little bit, is the human nature, right? And what we're led to believe. And the quote comes to my mind. I think it's a Mark Twain quote. It's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled.
Yep.
So and we need to control our emotions. And then here's another thing that, we've been programmed as a society over the past several decades. We've turned into this, I call it a microwave society, right? We want everything right freaking now, right? If you're sick, you take a pill and you get better. We don't want to wait. There is no sense of delayed gratification, right? In that type of thing. And there's some science. There's science behind that. People who practice delayed gratification, there's a part of your brain that actually gets stronger, and it can actually put off and stop or reverse some type of degenerative type diseases in practicing that delayed gratification. So everybody wants it now, fix it now. And you got to have some skin in the game too, right? You can't have everything done for you. That's what Trump, I believe, is waiting. Everybody's sitting there, waiting on Trump and the White Hats and the military to do something. Well, they're waiting on us. They're waiting on we the people. We the people have all the power. When he did his first inauguration address, he said he's giving the government back to we the people. He's passing us the ball, and we've mostly fumbled the ball. We're still waiting around, for Trump, white hats, whoever, whatever you want to call it, to ride in on the white horse and save the day, so we don't have to do any damn thing. So Lewis, he uses this saying. He says, what impression are you leaving are you leaving a bigger impression in your couch than you are on the world around you? We have to be the change that we want to see in the world. We need to learn to control, because, to get into the new world, right? We talk about the ascension, the 5D type stuff. We're not going to get there with the same thinking that we've gotten into this mess with. So that's why I've been focusing a lot on mindset type stuff, the thinking, the formula for creation is thoughts that can, create emotions, and those emotions create actions. Actions equal results. If you don't like results, you got to change your actions. If you don't like it, you got to change your thoughts. Everything's in the mind, right? If we learn to think better, we learn to think differently. Q talks about it tons and tons of times. Expand your thinking. I don't even know how many times Q drops, it's in there, that term, expand your thinking. We got to think outside the box. We cannot get to where we want to go. It's like, what's the other saying? You can't be, continue doing the same thing you've always done. You're always going to get the same thing you've always gotten. Right. So if we want to change some stuff, we're the ones that have to change. And so when you talking about that blame game, everybody wants to blame somebody else. It's not my fault. I didn't do it, But when you're pointing your finger at somebody else, there's three more pointing back at you, right? So you got to start looking in the mirror, and how can I be better? So that's how I've shifted in red pilling people, rather than trying to truth barf on them, is another thing that Lewis came up with. Trying to truth barf on them and tell them all this is adrenochrome, blah blah blah. Their heads explode. They go all crazy, like I can't handle it. But if you're I'm living my best freaking life right now. With all the chaos, things that seemingly going all awry all around me, I'm living my best life right now. I mean, of course, I have challenges. I'm not, going to sit here and tell you that everything's puppy dogs and rainbows all the time. But once you make that decision in your mind, you say, hey, I'm not going to let this affect me. I'm going to continue to push on. I'm going to be the best that I can be for the people around me, and then be that light. Light. Here's a news flash. Breaking news. Light is undefeated against darkness. Anytime light shows up, poof, darkness is gone. It cannot exist. They cannot coexist. So we have to be the light. That's the message that I want to bring forward to people. Is we can monitor, keep, be aware, protect yourself, get silver and gold, whatever, have some food, whatever, prepare for the worst, but expect the best. But we have to be the change that we want to see in the world. And that's where I've been, focusing a lot of my energy is learning in the mind. That's why I never thought I'd be an author. I wrote a little ebook, about mindset, 7 mindset shifts to change your life. So you can get that for free. You can, if you want to go, I'll put out it's 7, the number 7, mindsetshifts.net, 7mindsetshifts.net. You can go there, put your first name, email, and you get the book sent to you. Super easy. One little thing a day. And the first one, little cat out of the bag, it's breaking the mindset from being victim mentality to ownership. Victim to ownership. And even us in the right, Trumper, truthers, Patriots, whatever you want to call it, we sometimes, fall into that victimhood mentality too. Well, if it wasn't for the deep state, or this, all these, different agencies, everybody's coming against me. If it wasn't for them, I would be better off in my life. So we're still playing that game, even though we're on that true side, because we got to own it. Hey, doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to be fine. So it's all about it's all mindset stuff. And if we can move in that direction, think differently, we're going to end up being, and then having different actions, we're going to get different results. So that's
so what was that again, Bruce? 7 mind shifts.
7mindsetshifts.net. The number 7, mindsetshifts.net.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And just to go off what Bruce is saying, one example is
it's multiple shifts. S on the end there. 7mindsetshifts.net.
That's quite a tongue twister.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so that's 10 times fat. Yeah, mindset shit. I say shits all the time. Yeah.
Or like that.
There we go. Right.
Perfect. There you go.
And no
Beautiful.
shits.
No.
Yeah, right. No, I appreciate that, putting that up there. But yeah, I mean, that's all. It's all about how we perceive and how we observe and how we carry ourselves. That's what's going to affect the world around us. It's not what Trump and the White House are doing. Yeah, they're doing their job. Whatever is legal and lawful and what they can do. But it's still up to us. We, the people, have all the power. We need to realize that it's not. The power is not going to. Power comes from the bottom up here in the United States. That's the way the founding fathers set it up, and they've twisted and obfuscated and bastardized it and made us, think that they're our overlords. No, we're their overlords, right? So we have to, change that thing, the way we think and how we carry ourselves, and that's going to make a huge difference in our life.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
So, Joe, you've seen more than enough victim mentality out there. What do you see?
Well, I think what I was going to say is one example of someone being stretched and putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak, is Lewis Herms. I just want to say, first of all, anyone that lives in California or knows someone in California, Lewis Herms is running for government. I mean, he's a friend of all of ours. And I don't think when he started stepping into this and throwing these events that he was going to be throwing his hat in the ring to run for governor. But that's where this he's like been forged like iron and steel. He has to do this because he realizes that if he doesn't do it, that there's likely, now maybe this is my opinion, I don't think there's anyone better, because if Lewis becomes governor of California and that sets an example for other people that can speak freely about this to run, that's a massive paradigm shift. And that is part of the process. You can't just install Lewis, like a few years ago. He had to get to this point. So that's what I'm saying. We all have to be pushed to bring out parts of ourselves that maybe we thought they were there, but when you go through all this, it's like, oh my gosh, that's really there. I think Lewis, he has so much support. He's such a walking example of tenacity, and he's just amazing. What an honor to know that man. So everybody, please I just did, I'm editing the Rev 17 events. Lewis has a 22-minute speech. It's on I think it's on our Rumble too, but it's on our X account, and I'll share the link as well, Mark. But it's amazing. Lewis knocks it out of the park in 22 minutes of why he's running and what's inspired him and to do so. And it's the children. And it's like, it's such an honor to watch him work now. And so I just want to get that out there, because talk about walking the talk. That's Lewis Herms.
No, Lewis, I can't hand it to him enough. And look, one of our other good friends and leaders, the great general, says it all the time: local action, national impact.
Yep.
And people have to start taking the action and doing what's necessary, because, like I said before, this movement is not going to have legs. It's not going to have any kind of longevity if we don't stop waiting for somebody else to do it and get up and do it ourselves. You want something it's my generation. You want something done right, do it yourself.
Yep. And
people have to get back to that again. So
it's not to say that people are. There's tons of people that are stepping up and doing all kinds of great stuff. I mean, another guy that's running for governor, Doc Pete Chambers, is running for governor of Texas. Right? There's more and more quality people that understand the truth that are stepping up in certain. And that's not to say that everybody should go and run for office. Right? That might not be your path, but everybody has something that they can do. Whether and just sharing memes and watching shows, I don't think is going to cut it anymore. Right? As we love to have the validation and people tune in and all that different type of stuff. But I would rather see more people doing active stuff than than sitting and watching the shows. You know, that's another, you know, the mentality, the mindset type stuff. There's so many people, I can't tell you how many people say, oh, you know, I have my humanity project already set up, right? I've got all these plans that I want to do this and that. As soon as the RV happens, I'm going to be able to do my humanity. Why don't start your humanity project right freaking now? Why are you going to wait for the RV? You know, health stuff. Man, if I could just if the med beds would just be released, I'd be able to get healthy and this and that, as they're sitting there chugging on a 2-liter of soda and pounding Big Macs, right? So if I could just get a med bed, I'd be fine, right? So we need to take some damn action ourselves to be able to move forward on all different areas of life. And I know that there's people out there doing all kinds of stuff, but we need more. That's part of the problem, is that we're such a small remnant, if you will, using that word, number of people. We need more people that are wanting to change. And just like Patriot Underground was talking about, that marketing thing, right? We got to get people aware, interested, desire, and then we can take some action. So we're far from being able to turn this whole thing around. Juan talks about the near-death experience that's coming for America, and you know, the scare event, all these different things. That's still in the cards, right? Those things haven't happened yet. So you know, we need to, you know, be prepared, you know, buckle up, but at the same time, continue to push out there and live your best life right now. There's not a better time to be alive and do things that can help you, your family, and humanity without having to wait for somebody else to do something for you.
Well, all of that is kind of a good segue into where I was going to go next with View Patriot. You know, we do what we do. I've said it many times on the air. This is my penance for 46 years in the mainstream media. You know, I joke about it, but in a way, it's very, very true. You know, finally, how much I complained about a lack of integrity in the business, and now I'm bringing it. I'm bringing back the integrity. But we all do this to get the message out to people. And yet we get held to a totally different standard many of the times than regular idiots with suits and ties sitting in front of the studio camera get held responsibly. And it really, you know, sometimes it's very rewarding, and other times it's really very, very frustrating, because we're not sitting here. We certainly ain't getting multi-million-dollar contracts doing this. We're doing it out of concern. We're doing it out of trying to help the movement, and we're doing it out of the goodness of our hearts, really. And yet we take a lot of crap. So roll off of that one.
Well, I've come to learn, you know, it's interesting because all of us, with the exception of you, Mark, who already worked in media, I think most people who are in the truth community now, we just pretty much started off as audience members ourselves. I mean, that was my path. I was listening. A lot of the people that I speak to on a fairly consistent basis, or at least that I have throughout the course of the 4+ years I've been doing this, these are the people that I listened to before I started getting behind a microphone and just started doing my commentary. And so in the beginning, it was sort of an evolution for me, because I approached it very much from that place that I was at that point in time, just presenting myself to my audiences. I'm just another I'm just another bozo on the bus, so to speak. You know, I'm just trying to figure it all out along with you. And, you know, if you guys are willing to listen to me, you know, talk about my thoughts and feelings along the way, and, you know, you resonate, great. That's really was kind of like the way that my platform was born. And then something weird happens along the way where you start to develop a larger following. And I think that those expectations and what you just described starts to apply a little bit more, where people, they put a lot more, I suppose, you know, they put a lot more pressure on you as being somewhat of I mean, none of us are, like, let's be honest, none of us are household names or famous or anything. But once you start to be recognized, there's kind of like that automatic pressure that goes along with it. And I've learned to adjust and adapt to that, and just realize that it's just part of what you signed up for. I mean, I may not have realized that was what I was signing up for at the time, but you know, as you go along and you start to get a larger following, a bigger audience, you know, obviously it's going to attract a whole bunch of different viewpoints to begin with. But there are going to be a lot of people who are going to hold you to that standard, I guess, that you were talking about. And a lot of it has to do with, you mentioned the talking heads in suits. I mean, the people who watch our shows, they've completely abandoned any credibility in these people a long time ago. Unlike us, like they see us and they're like, okay, I don't know about this guy. You know, he seems like he's kind of credible. It's like people are kind of searching for a voice to trust, and that's totally understandable. But it also goes back to what Bruce was talking about a moment ago, about people having to do the work themselves, having to do their own research, having to be just as much a part of this as all of us are. And I think that that is something that, unfortunately, you do see some people fall into that category of just wanting to point fingers instead of looking at it as really a collaborative effort. That's the way I've always looked at this whole thing. Like, I don't know any more than anybody on this screen. I don't know any more than anybody who's watching this show. I have my take. I have my analysis. People who follow my channel like to listen to that, but that doesn't mean that I have the answers. It doesn't mean like I'm the dispenser of truth. And if I get something wrong, or any of us get something wrong, that there's any credibility to be lost on the other end of it. I think conversely, I mean, I guess if you set it up and you tell people, and we know that there are certain individuals out there who have done this, if you put yourself up on a pedestal and say, well, I have all this information, and you lead people to believe that you're somebody that you're not, or you have information and insights or you know, connections that other people don't have, and then you fail to deliver on that, then I think you've opened yourself up to that level of scrutiny where people can point the finger and say you're full of crap. But you know, if you're basically just being honest with folks and you're saying, this is my perspective, this is my opinion, I'm passionate about it, this is the reasons why I feel this way, but I'm not presenting it to you as if it's the gospel truth. You still have to do your job and vet all the information that I say. Everything. I mean, I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. It's part of it. And we're trying to navigate something completely unprecedented. There's no like manual. It's like they say when you have kids, they don't come with a manual. You know, it's like you just have to kind of figure it out as you go along. And that's what all of us are doing. And you know, so I guess to answer your question, yes, I've seen it, but I don't put a lot of I don't put a lot of stock in it anymore. If I'm being completely honest with you, I used to be a lot more sensitive to the comments, to the negative comments and things along those lines. But after a while, you know, you develop a callus to it. You realize it's free speech. People are going to say what they're going to say. They're going to hear what they want to hear. They're going to take things out of context. They're going to cherry pick certain things. It's like you can't control the way that people are going to react and respond, nor should you try. And you just kind of, you know, so unless somebody's like obviously a troll or someone like obviously a bot or something, I just let it go. And I say, all right, you know, you don't like my perspective and you think it's worth your time to come in here and write 52 comments explaining how bad of a person I am, knock yourself out. I mean, go ahead. But you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, you recognize that this is a relatively small group. You go into the comments on any video, the people, the trolls, they're always the loudest ones. They're always the ones who are trying that's their whole game. But when you scroll out, you zoom out and you just take a look at, you know, your body of work as a whole, your following as a whole, and you can see that the vast majority of the people understand what you're trying to do. And you haven't really strayed from your mission. You just rest on that and let people say and think whatever they want.
Exactly. Now, I mean, Bruce, this is your first time with me, with us. Maybe that's not a good way to put that.
I'm happy to pop my cherry with y'all, man.
But the point being, I call the show Respect. And, you know, granted, I've got a number of years on all of you. But I'm very big on respect. And I'm very big on the attitudes of decency and a lot of what we have lost not just in this country, but in this world. And I've made no bones about the fact to the entire audience that, they put things in the chat. I can't read the chat when we're on the air. These are basically trifocals. If you see me going like this, then I'm reading at the beginning of the show. So, but I can't see it. So I go back and I look at it later on. And what drives me nuts, above and beyond anything else, is when we're having a serious discussion or somebody is pouring out their hearts on the show about their own personal experiences, and people are talking, apples to oranges. It's the same thing, when for all the years that I played in bands and we play in some bar and the people are just, having loud conversations instead of listening to the band. And at the end they might go, oh yeah. So it's the same type of thing. And it's a disregard and disrespect for us as people and for us, what we're doing. And how do you find that? How does it affect you? How does it bother you?
Well, that's been one of the, my interaction when I do the live streams is I love, interacting with the people in the chat. And I try to, keep them engaged into the conversation. But I have seen, that situation going on. People are having, side conversations, and we're, talking about different stuff. And what we have lost some of the I love that respect thing, and the be able to have, understand and have a different viewpoint, and let's hash this out. The side chats and people having a social interaction in the chats while you're doing a show on completely something different. That's a different subject, but being able to have a conversation and have divergent viewpoints and still respect each other, right? That's part of the matrix. The binary choices. We have to be either left or right. It has to be white or black, right? You can't. Can't have something different. You're either for like just recently this whole Trump and Epstein thing. Well, if you're still for Trump, now you're for pedophiles because he's covering them up. That's the attitude that some people are taking, and so that's been I believe a intentional insertion into society, a societal construct of having, if you can't have you have to be on our page or I can't have you. The whole doxing, canceling because you have a different viewpoint, the whole LGBTQ thing, the transgenders, militia, just crazy about that type of stuff. And I don't care what you do, in your own house, but when you start pushing that stuff on kids, that's where I have a problem, right? Let's have that conversation, but we can't have that conversation in society today because everybody, gets their feelings hurt, their emotions get involved. They're wanting this participation trophy. Where we're at in society has been a slow and intentional putting us into a certain path. Goes all the way back, into the participation trophies and worrying about people's feelings. And hey, I don't go out when I say things to intentionally hurt somebody, to be offensive. But if you take offense to what I'm saying, that's your problem, not mine. Right? I'm just, saying my truth. I don't go out with the intent to hurt, but people do end up getting hurt because, they don't like to hear the uncomfortable things. So we need to get back to that, being able to compromise and have a discussion and still be friends. Anybody here, have hardcore Democrats, progressive communists that are still friends with? Probably not. They don't like us. They don't want to have that discussion because they realize that they can't have a genuine intellectual discussion about truth, honesty, facts, and information because they're on the losing end. They cannot justify their craziness, and they end up calling the names. You start try to have a real intellectual discussion with people about different things, and it devolves into Orange Man bad. That's all I got. And
this is, look, Joe, this is the thing that we've all gone through and we all see. And one of the most common characteristic traits, if you want to call it that people have thrown at the president is, well, he doesn't speak like a president. He doesn't act presidential. And you'll pardon my Brooklyn coming out. Have you seen what the fucking people who act presidential have done to this country over the past 100 years and change?
Exactly.
You know, but just like Bruce just said, we've lost the ability to converse, to agree, to disagree.
Yep.
You know, if you are talking with a normie, if we brought this show into normiedom, you would have a bunch of, you know, green-haired, multicolor flag people screaming and just going crazy at you because they can't put a cogent conversation together to have with you. And this is part of our lives doing this. Now, you do a wide swath of shows with all kinds of guests on it in all kinds of topics. What do you find with your audience in general, live and after they're watching in replay?
I mean, the audience is, I would say, pretty much on board. It's just, for example, it's me going out in public. I just went out in Tacoma. There's something called Porch Fest, and you know, I'm just walking around. I'm not saying much. I'm there to listen to music, but just kind of taking in what I'm seeing. And there's so much of the brainwashing. You know, it's this, the stand for trans kids and all these things. And it's stuff we didn't see, you know, a couple decades ago when I was more in the music scene and you know, I was running my own bar. And, you know, it's disheartening to see the brainwashing in the parents and the people that are having their kid wear the rainbow colored wristband and walking around with the flags. I mean, I'm seeing the brainwashing of the parents and the children. And, you know, look, I have a lot of friends who are gay, and some of them are actually really waking up. No one cares what people do in their bedroom. Why? You know, it started off as they wanted respect for, you know, their vote and, you know, for their voices. And of course that's understandable. But when you're pushing this ideology on children, like the kids don't even have a chance to just find out who they are, because, you know, kids now, it's like, well, if you're not bi and if you're 12, 13, 14, whatever, you're not invited to the party. Like there must be something in you that's open to being bi. And that's where I have a hard time with it. And I see it. I saw it, like I said, today. And Tacoma's a pretty, there's a lot of artists here. I'm one myself, but I think that why there's been a lot of this with me speaking out, especially earlier. I do post these shows on our Facebook. I mean, some I'll post on my Facebook per se, but it's not so much the shows, Mark. It's being in public and watching the brainwashing of children. That's, you know, that Scott and I started TruthStream because I'm not going to live in a world where, you know, if I could have anything to do with it, where children are sexualized. That doesn't fly. So there's my long-winded answer.
Well, but Patriot, you know, and because we're getting near the point and these do get dragged down a lot. The point that Joe was just making, and it leads to my last and related R, because we can't have these discussions and we can't get things along, and most of us understand. And I've always used the phrase, if, you know, the more that you wave the red flag, the more likely you are to get gored by the bull. And that's what causes a lot of these problems, because people, I've always said with gay marriage, okay, they have just as much right to be miserable as the rest of us. But facts being what they are, if you're going to stand out there and go, look at us, we just got married, nobody gives a damn. Okay, keep it to yourself. Be happy that you've got the rights. Be happy you found somebody that you love and you want to spend your life with, et cetera, et cetera. Stop making a big deal out of it. But again, it boils down to this final R, which has also been lost in our society, and that is responsibility. Nobody wants to be responsible for anything nowadays. And this is a mindset that has really been drummed into people's heads through the media. This is a mindset that has been drummed into people's heads by the legal community. If you were born with a hangnail, we'll get you money. All of this crap that people put out, nobody has to be responsible for anything. I mean, how many centuries were people born with CP or this or that or the other? And now you're going to blame the nurses, or you're going to blame the doctor because, you were a crack addict while you were pregnant and now the kid's got some kind of disability. No. So for this last round, let's dwell on responsibility.
Well, it's a great place to kind of tie all this together, because it's in a lot of ways, it speaks to the majority of our conversation tonight, which is all about how do we reverse, you talked about a mindset. We grew up in a world where the cabal was increasingly, I guess, on a societal level, engaged in this divide and conquer strategy. By any means that they could possibly divide us, they would. And so that mindset, I almost think of it as almost like a mass MK Ultra operation on the public that took many decades to get us to this point. It didn't just happen, right? I mean, everybody on this panel, I'm 46 years old. I don't know how old you guys are specifically, but we're all old enough to remember a time when, like Mark, you were talking about, bringing back respect, the ability to agree to disagree and all of these things. There was never a point in human history where everybody agreed on everything. That's never been the objective, but there was still more of a sense of unity. I remember it from my childhood growing up in the 80s. There was more of a sense of just kind of, I was looking at it from a child's perspective, but I was taught to be proud to be an American, to salute the flag. And there was just kind of this sense within society that people, despite their differences, there was still kind of this cohesive unity that held us all together. And that's why I think the drops talk so explicitly about unity and what's going to unify people. But through looking at this through the lens of, the scope of our conversation tonight, it's about reversing the cabal mindset that we were indoctrinated with. And that's a big part of what, a little while ago, Bruce was talking about, kind of like what's the whole purpose of this military civilian alliance. Like the military is doing what they've got to do. The White Hats are doing their job. But the civilians, particularly, and I think when Q talked about this, the civilians that were being referred to are the Anons, the awakened community. What's our responsibility? And being, giving power back to the people. What does that really mean? You can't give, just like, you can't give a child a bunch of, you can't give a child a home, a mortgage, a car, and all of these responsibilities and expect that they're going to know what to do with them. And so in a lot of ways, this process is training us, I think, to be as leaders, not just us on this panel, but everybody who's listening out there, to be leaders in our own communities, to be able to be the springboard to launch that, that new society where we break away from this old mindset. we gravitate toward division. We don't have to agree on everything, but I mean, this is what they've done. And Mark, you were talking about this with the, with the trans stuff, and Joe is talking about this as well. Part of this whole operation of this cabal mindset was to replace individual responsibility and respect and sovereignty and unity with identity politics. Mm-hmm. To give people a cause célèbre, to give people a reason to feel like they've been victimized. And it plays very well into basic human nature. Like if people see that, oh, everybody's got a reason that they've been victimized and everybody's got, a bone to pick with somebody else, that's the best way to divide the public. And that's exactly what's happened. And we're reversing that process. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, we can't just flip a switch and expect that people are going to just shake off decades of programming, decades of conditioning and indoctrination into a certain mindset that was given to us by the enemy, not just given to us, but perpetuated every single day of our lives. Yep. More and more and more. They kept turning up the volume on this. I mean, even back in the 90s, it wasn't that bad, but then it just like every year, it just got more and more divisive. And it gets to a point where people are just, it's like you can't have those conversations because people are leading, instead of leading with respect and leading with, this idea that, maybe I might be able to learn something from this person. Maybe like Bruce said, we can agree to disagree, but we can still be friends. Instead of leading with that and a general curiosity, people lead with suspicion and anger and resentment. And it's almost like they're looking to get into, they're looking to find that division instead of looking to find that unity. And that's what this is all about, this in the grand scheme of things, in terms of putting our society back together, making America great again, making the world great again by extension. It starts with all of us. And Bruce said it best. We are the ones who have the power, but we have to be in a position, we have to be ready, prepared to be able to accept that responsibility. Like not to use the cliche, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. With great power comes great responsibility. So if we're being given back that power, we have to demonstrate that we actually have that, and not just like the people who are listening to this podcast, but we're talking about, and this is where you have to keep in mind the military's role here, because we have a very limited scope compared to what the military is looking at and their responsibility. So we're just kind of looking at it through what we see online and how we interact with our audience, how we interact with each other, etc. But there's a much bigger picture here. I mean, the military is ultimately guiding this whole process to protect that mass consciousness, like we were talking about in the context of Epstein. So as we go through this process of rebuilding and gradually building up to the truth, and recognizing, as I've said many times, what's the real antidote to that division? If there is an antidote at all, it's the recognition that we have a common enemy who's been trying to divide us this entire time. And just think about how the world would change. The world will change. I'm not going to say would change, but will change almost overnight if there is a mass recognition that despite who you are, regardless of whether you're male, female, black, white, it doesn't matter what your sexuality is, all the ways that they've tried to divide us, that we all have a common enemy, that hidden hand that's been doing that to us and eroding our society from within and victimizing all of us in this process. Once people come to see that, that's the moment that the world changes. And that's where I think we're building up to it. So that's why you have the civilian aspect. We have to do our part. And indeed we are. And great points were made on that front tonight, but we also have to recognize that it could never be done without the military guiding the process, from a much higher viewpoint, I'll just say.
And people should really keep it in the forefront of their minds that there's a reason, going all the way back to Caesar, why they practice divide and conquer. Because if you're looking over there, you ain't seeing what's going on right here. So they don't want you looking right here. They want you looking over there. They want us fighting each other, not fighting them.
Yep.
Where are you on the R word, Bruce?
It's huge. I mean, that's the 4-letter word that everybody hates, right? We don't want to be responsible. Responsible. It's it's a poor. It's like, again, it goes back to the societal programming, the societal. This thing has been constructed. If you look into some of the Tavistock, those people doing that type of stuff, they make these things happen. And without responsibility, you can't have ownership without responsibility. And responsibility doesn't mean that you're taking everything is your fault, but you made certain choices to put yourself in positions. As an example, let's say you're driving down the road and somebody T-bones you. Are you responsible for that? Somebody runs a red light and runs right to the side of your car. Are you responsible? I don't think so. Well, most people would say I don't think so, but you are. You chose to drove that at that time on that road. You went that particular direction, so you made some choices that put you in that position. It doesn't mean to say that everything is your fault, but if we have our personal responsibility, and that's we talk about the division of the founding fathers. When they were hashing out the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, they almost came to blows, right? These guys were about throwing hands, trying to work these things out, and they ended up doing it. And the idea was self-governance. And here's the problem is we have outsourced our own self-governance for so very long. We don't have any idea what it freaking means to be able to, what is self-governance, because we've outsourced that. We've been led to believe that the people that we go in and pull the lever for and vote for have our best interest, our representatives have our own best interest at heart. Well, then, now we've, sadly coming to the realization that that's really not the case. So how do we, and Patriot even mentioned earlier, we've never been down this road before. We've never had to fight, reclaim our freedom and sovereignty from tyranny, like they did, back, before they wrote the Declaration of Independence during the Revolutionary War. I mean, they started a war over a 3% tax over tea, but yet, they're taking 30, 40, 50% of our tax, from us now, and we're fine with that, right? So, and so we need to have, understand. Really, gain a deep understanding, if you don't have already, what does self-governance mean, right? I don't, whatever these guys do, I don't care. They don't have no jurisdiction over me. And there was, a while back, a lot of people were doing, and some people still are, the whole sovereignty movement, right? You got to reclaim your sovereignty. You got to file all your paperwork and all that. F that. I just made a decision in my mind and in my heart. I'm already sovereign. They don't have jurisdiction over me. I don't play that game. Right? They don't have jurisdiction. I am responsible for my own life. I'm responsible for my own decisions, and I'm going to screw them up. I'm going to fall. I'm going to crash and burn, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to pick myself up and go back at it again with some better information, better knowledge, better understanding of how I can, win in that situation. Because we have to adopt the mindset. I never fail. I don't fail. I just learn how some shit don't work, and then I go and try it again. Right. So I either win or I learn how it doesn't work. So that's how you got to approach life. You got to be, responsibility is the key of everything. And that's one of the, other than respect, I think it's even worse off from a societal standpoint that we've lost the personal responsibility for our own, situation, our own reality, our own life. It's always somebody else's fault, but Bruce, you don't understand what's going on in my life when I try to help people and coach them through different stuff. But you don't understand. I have this XYZ and I had this problem in my past. I don't care. It doesn't matter. That's in the past. It doesn't matter. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. You could have been a total asshole, crash and burn and beat your wife, kick your dog. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. But I don't have to. All I got to do, all I got's right now, this minute, this second, right now is all I got. I want to be the best that I can be right now. So don't dwell in the past. That's where depression comes from. If you got anxiety, you're worried about the future. If you just live in the now, and like I said before, live your best life right now, it's everything's going to be fine.
Exactly. Never worry about tomorrow, because when tomorrow comes, tomorrow's today.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
there you go.
Jojo, How are you responsible, sir?
Well, you know,
He's one of the most irresponsible people I've ever met in my life. This guy, he's sitting out in the woods. I think he's actually a what do they call it? A Bigfoot? You know, yeah, one of those guys. He lives in the woods up there in Washington.
Well, we already saw him sitting there in the woods molesting a dog, so it's
Oh, well, to get back to the question at hand, I think as far as I feel a responsibility in, you know, if I find certain clips that are inspirational, I try to find, you know, I try to share inspiring things. So what I've done is, and then it's also, and this is where I could really use the help as far as responsibility. If the digital warriors out there on X can share any of the speeches from the Rev 17 event that I asked them that they needed help, like where we need help is getting, I mean, we're talking Lara Logan, Lee Dundas. There's so many amazing speakers. Seek Smith, she's part of a group. I'll look that up in a second here, but there's so many amazing speakers. Mom Army. So, and hers is only like 14 minutes. Just getting these clips out there to raise awareness, because basically what it is the Piece of Heaven is a sanctuary in California, and Lewis Herm spoke there as well, where they're going to have a place for children who've been trafficked to heal. And so I suppose where I'm using my responsibility is spreading the word for their mission. And it's been great because Lara Logan, I did the edit for her, and we're getting her speech out there, because, you know, some of these are like 8 to 10 hour days, and, you know, that's a lot for people to go through. And then eventually my responsibility will be making a shorter clip and then making a thread out of it. So that would be one thing. And then there's one other clip that's only a couple minutes. That's Ricardo Bossi. And I thought it'd be really great to end with this, because it's really inspiring for people to get involved, and a way to do that. So Mark, if you could please play this amazing clip. This is from about 4 years ago, but it's very on point from Ricardo Bossi. And he mentioned Steve Mnuchin, and we can talk about that after, as a producer on the film that he's going to talk about.
Okay. Let's once again.
Little inspiration for folks.
Boom, 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 boom. Where am I?
Well, he's pulling that particular inspiration. Check out some of Joe's music. Talk about being inspired. Joe writes fantastic music. Is the Unity song? What Unveiled or Lifting Veils, or Freedom Now. I mean, he's just a prolific artist with fantastic messaging. So find Joe's stuff somewhere.
It's all on the link tree. Everything's there. Thank you for that.
Fan camp, yeah.
There you go. Let's close that. Let's take.
And then there's the Dear Mr. President. It sounds like,
oh my gosh, that's crazy going. I got my clip.
Oh my gosh. It's basically for everyone that out there. It's Dear Mr. President, DEARMR, because spelling it didn't, that was page was taken, president.net. And it's basically a documentary that's being put together right now on censorship. And Patriot Underground is going to be part of it. Lewis Herms, I think everyone on this panel is going to be a part of it. So that's pretty exciting that that's coming out, hopefully in the next couple months. But Mike Smith, I reached out to Mike Smith from Out of Shadows. He's going to be on board. Lara Logan, Ted Nugent. So lots of great truthers.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get that clip in here.
Here comes Bossy.
There it is.
Thanks for playing this.
Here. Oh, for you anytime, Joe. Okay.
Google The Hero's Journey. Watch Star Wars again. Watch all those movies, and you realize the hero leaves the village, refuses to meet the challenges, faces a series of challenges, and eventually gets back up there. Now, the best summary of this, the best movie you can watch, and I discovered it by accident, and this is the best piece of advice I'll give you today. It's a movie called Arthur, Legend of the Sword, with Charlie Hunnam. It's a classic. Now, one of the greatest films ever made. Unfortunately, it didn't do well because I think people were sorted out by Game of Thrones, which I didn't watch, so I watched this Arthur Legend of the Sword. What's the story? It's a brilliant story. And it's made by Guy Ritchie, who's an outstanding storyteller. Background, my guess, Guy Ritchie wrote this for his son to understand his upbringing from his prostitute mother, Madonna. So it's a love letter from a father to a son. That's just my take on it. Now, step back from that. Watch the movie once, because the movie is just breathtaking. The imagery and the allegory are brilliant. The character development, superb. But what you're watching in this whole film is normal life, change event occurs, wants to hang on, can't. Goes through a series of challenges, doesn't want to face the challenge. This is part of the hero's journey. I want to go back. I don't want to face it. I don't want the responsibility. But we have to. Every one of us, if you're a mum or a dad, you have no choice. And there's a great line. Everyone looks away, but that's the difference between a king and the others. A king cannot look away. A king has to face danger. That's what you have to do. So watch this movie, please. Best piece of advice you'll ever get on this show. Arthur, Legend of the Sword, Charlie Hunnam. Buy the DVD, watch it several times, because there is so much. It is so rich with meaning and lesson and allegory. It'll actually empower you in an hour and a half more than any change management seminar will. It'll help you become what you were created to be. Man or woman makes no difference. But as I said, the difference between a king and everybody else, the king doesn't look away. The king has to look at danger and move forward and take that responsibility. Because if you don't, and there's a poignant moment in the film where he considers not taking up the challenge, and what would happen if he doesn't. So I'll leave it there, but please watch it. Arthur, Legend of the Sword, Charlie Hunnam. Yeah. Produced, one of the producers was Steve Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury of the United States.
No, you're kidding.
No, absolutely.
Is that funny?
Extraordinary movie. Folks, watch it, get empowered, and get to work.
Yeah, talking about doing.
Very interesting.
Thanks for
and
playing.
Quite a great segue, because he is my guest next week.
Nice.
Talking about child trafficking and the media. Very interesting.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because he loves Patriot Underground. I gotta say, Bossy is there's some stuff in the chat, whatever about Bossy, but I mean to have someone with his background talking about this stuff that's military, it really helps me personally to understand that there is a military operation going on, and it gives me peace of mind. And I just think sometimes it's, and now the Steve Mnuchin thing, this is where I was going with that. I've heard, because Steve Mnuchin, you got Secretary of the Treasury and filmmaker, and we're watching a movie. I think, now I'm not sure of Steve Mnuchin's background. He might have went to one of the universities that, whether Yale or one of those, I'd have to look. I think I've heard that before. But I believe that he might be one of those people that said, look, we have it all, and this is what you need to do. And the movie that we're watching, I think Steve Mnuchin might be playing a very large role in the orchestrations that we're watching. And that might be what Bossy was alluding to. I didn't watch the entire hour and 45-minute interview. I think I found the right one, but I didn't see that part of it. But anyway, I just am throwing that out there because I think he has some very valuable insight, and as do you guys, obviously, because you've had him on your show and you're going to have him on your show. So
yeah, to me, it's a great honor. But, I feel honored by having you guys on the show. So where's my head? But no, it's been a great conversation. Let's kind of wrap it up, since we're over the 2-hour mark, and I know some of you have to get up in the morning. So let's go. Let's start with you, Joe. Final thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's always inspiring to talk to you guys. And I was really excited that Bruce could join us, because Bruce has been, ever since I met Bruce in person on the Truth Tour, he's been a brother through this. And thanks again for the kind words to the music. It's great to be able to have an outlet for my artwork and put it towards something that's meaningful, because I just, I don't, I went to an event today where there's literally hundreds of bands playing, and I just don't feel inspired to play an event like that, being vulnerable and talking about the subject matter, because it's just not the time yet. So, we all got to hang in there. And I love roundtables like this because it gets out to so many more people, because there is censorship, there is shadow banning, and it's so great to be on an outlet that has less of that than ours. I think it sure looks that way. And so, guys, keep your heads up. We're going through some turbulent times, but what's coming is amazing. And what an honor to even be here and have these conversations and have people listening to us. Because when I started this, I wasn't sure where any of this was going. But like Poppy says, and I think it's Kathy, Christiane Northrup, you got to align with the divine. And I just live my life now where I'm a sail and God's the wind, and I'm taken wherever direction I'm led to go. So with that, thank you guys. It's an honor to be here.
Bruce.
Well, I'm also super excited that you guys have me on here today. But yeah, there's so much that we want to see happen, and we want it to happen quicker than it needs to happen. But there are reasons why it needs to take as long as it is. And while we're waiting for those things to happen, let's do some work on our own selves and be the best humans we can be, so we can be better served. Because I believe many of us that were awakened, there's many that were awakened much earlier than myself, but there's a large contingent of people that we're in training right now. When we think things have been bad, but when the poop really hits the fan, as it comes, as more, and this stuff, this slow drip, it's becoming a little stream, and then the fire hose gets turned on. It's going to be up to us, not just us on the show, but the people watching, us awakened ones, to be able to come alongside those people that are friends and neighbors that told us are crazy, whatever, that don't believe us, that they won't invite us to Thanksgiving or anything like that, because we believe 9/11 was an inside job and the Holocaust was a hoax. We're going to have to come alongside those people and help them along, help them understand. We got to be the ones. So we have to build ourselves up. We have to train ourselves to be able to be the best human beings we can be. And it's easier to say than it is to do. And it's a minute by minute battle, this whole mindset thing. But if we set our intention on doing that stuff, nothing can stop us. We are unstoppable. Like I said, light is undefeated against darkness. They cannot coexist. So as going forward, I am a huge part of the Lewis Herms for Cali campaign for governor. We are going to be having on August 2nd on his channel and many other channels a kind of a campaign kickoff marathon thing where, we've done these truth-a-thons in the past. This is going to be a little different. We're going to have some performative stuff, some comedy, music, different things, all kinds of different speakers coming through. But the intention of that show on August 2nd, it's going to be an 8-hour deal, is to bring awareness to Lewis's campaign fundraiser, of course, because unfortunately, the way the system is set up, you need a shit ton of money to be just for ad buys and all this different stuff. We're going to be doing a tour of California end of September through October, almost to Thanksgiving. So we'll be, traveling up and down California, doing the whole campaign thing, shaking hands and kissing babies. So I'm super excited to be a part of that. And it's just a blessing to see so many quality people in this movement that are really authentic. There are some scumbags out there, quite honestly. But, you have to, that's why you got to be connected to your creator and understand, use your intuition and discernment about, what, that's why Q talks about be careful who you follow, because you can be led down the wrong path. And there's lots of people that are popping up now with this whole Epstein Trump thing that you're seeing their true colors. And, you just got to watch, people by their fruit. So trust God and trust the plan. Thank you for having me on here today. It was awesome.
Patriot.
Well, tough act to follow. I mean, both great final comments there. Yeah, Ricardo Bossi is a good friend of mine, and actually, it reminded me of before he and I actually met. I saw I think he was interviewing Jan Halper Hayes, and I saw him talking about. I'd actually never seen the clip that Joe played, but I saw this clip where he was beginning the conversation with her, talking about the hero's journey, and that was actually a little bit more than a year ago. And I did a whole podcast on it because I was inspired by it. And Rick ended up seeing it, and it started a really great relationship. And I have him on pretty regularly, so that was pretty cool to see that. But yeah, amazing conversation tonight. I was really honored to be a part of it. I think it was great to start off talking about the issue that's front and center for everybody right now, but then really branch out and talk about, in a lot of ways, what I always consider to be the 40,000 foot view. The bigger picture. That really is. It's been said in a million different ways, and on this panel tonight, in multiple different forms. That's what we need to be reminded of. We can't get caught up too much in the drama that's not really intended for us. And I think that a big part of this conversation tonight was outlining what is our real responsibility as Anons. So we're going through this entire process. We have a different responsibility as well. I mean, Mark, you talked a lot about, you raised that as a topic, and what's our responsibility? And it's to be, as Bruce was saying, and as Joe was mirroring as well, to be the best version of ourselves, to continually ask ourselves, how can we get better? How can, like what's that saying? Yesterday's a mystery. Or no, yesterday's history. Tomorrow's a mystery, right? And today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. All right. I knew I'd get there eventually, but this idea of living in the moment and recognizing that, yes, all of these things are going to happen. They are happening. I had a conversation with Awakened Outlaw not too long ago, and he used the metaphor of people, it's like we're kids in the back seat who keep complaining to our parents, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
I got to pee.
Right. Yeah. And I said, that's a great analogy. I said, but it's interesting because even though we're kind of like, you could compare us to like the kids in the back seat, are we there yet? But we can still look out the window and we can see how far we've come along the way of the journey.
Oh, wow.
We may not know exactly how much longer it's going to take. Well, I mean, we don't, none of us do. And we may not even be able to make sense of everything that we see outside the window, but we certainly know that we've gained a lot of ground. And we can see that, we're not stagnant here. We're moving very rapidly in the right direction for all the reasons that we talked about tonight. And I was coming full circle back to Epstein and everything. I mean, look, we don't know how they're going to script this whole thing out, folks, but one thing is for sure, disclosure is coming. And it's absolutely, it's been the entire purpose of everything that we've spent years on at this point. Tracking this journey is building up to this inevitable moment where it's going to come. And I just happen to think, I didn't mention this earlier, but I have this sneaking suspicion that now that Epstein has been, like I said, kind of tossed in or converge, it seems to be converging, this conversation about Epstein with Comey and Brennan and Russiagate and all of that. Wouldn't that be an opportune time to have Julian Assange come back into the mix?
Oh,
I'm just going to throw that out there.
I know there's a couple of trump cards that could be played that would be very, very exciting to see.
People are wondering, if they're closing the book on Epstein, where's the disclosure going to come from, folks? They've got it, and they've got it 6 ways from Sunday. There's a lot of different avenues that they can go down. So I guess my overall message to everybody out there is keep the faith, trust the plan. We're exactly where we're supposed to be at this point, despite whatever our expectations are. Do the best you can to try to, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, to try to learn. And I'm still in this process myself. I'm not preaching to anyone. I'm just sharing my viewpoint here. Learn how to disconnect yourself from those expectations, and you'll be in a much greater place of peace. And recognize that just the optics that you're seeing, and I talked about this yesterday, when they're leading you to believe that it's like we're closing the book on Epstein, you're not going to hear about this anymore, you can take it to the bank that means the exact opposite is going to happen. And we're already seeing it everywhere. Tucker Carlson, I mean, he one of the biggest voices in the world, Benny Johnson. I mean, these guys are all over this stuff. and they're personal friends with a lot of these people like Bondi and Bongino. I mean, these are like high profile folks, and they're not letting it go. You even got Alan Dershowitz on TV saying that he's seen the list. He knows he's bound by a court order. He can't talk about it, but he knows for a fact that people are being protected. Alan Dershowitz, by the way, defected to the White Hats. So in case folks didn't know that, there's a post where I think I put it in the notes here. Where is it? Q1174, where it says, "Alan, welcome aboard plane 17." I mean, good things are happening. I guess that's my point. It's not going to go according to the way we want it to, or think it will, or expect it to. That's the design of 5th generation war, but we're getting it, folks. So keep the faith, and thank you, everybody. An honor to be here tonight.
Guys, I gotta thank you. I mean, this was just an awesome discussion. Joe, great, always a lot of fun. Bruce, welcome for the first time. And Patriot, I mean, always great discussions that we have. And people, bear in mind that you've heard me say it before, and I'll repeat it and repeat it and repeat it because it's so important. Patience. Patience is a virtue that so few people have. And in the times that we've been thrown into, the times we've been conditioned for, especially if you're living in a major city, patience is an extreme rarity. But take that breath. Give it the 24-hour rule or the 48-hour rule or the 72-hour rule. Take the breath. Practice the patience. Practice the respect. And try and be decent to one another, because we get one crack at this, and that's it. And if we screw it up, you might as well pack it up. So, like has been said by everybody tonight, let's try to be the best versions of ourselves that we could possibly be. And spread that. It's a lot easier to smile than it is to frown and be miserable.
Yep.
Not easy in these times, but let's all do it. So again, I want to thank you guys. It's been a great show. Of course, I want to thank Kat, Claudia, and Kerry and Doug, without whom we would not be. As I said before, next week is going to be a great discussion with Lieutenant Colonel Bosi. It's going to be a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun. It's not a happy topic, but it's going to be a great discussion. So I hope to see you all there next week for another Respect. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday again on Respect. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.